Well, hello there again. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to talk about on this video, but I recently finished an indie 16-bit throwback RPG called Quartet on PC. I played it on my Steam Deck. I played it because I had tried out the demo, and a lot of people that I'm mutuals in contact with on various platforms were really into it and really enjoyed it. And I finished it not that long ago, and it's good. It's real good. It's ultimately not anything that I consider really all that special. I've played a shit ton of RPGs over the last nearly 40 years. So, well, I would guess closer to 30, 35 or so for RPGs. Anyway, uh, it doesn't really move that needle very far for me. It does some moderately interesting things. I think the big thing is that it's a cast of 8, not unlike the Octopath Traveler series, but it does a much better job of bringing those characters together into a cohesive overall narrative instead of just this weird, like, you got to complete all 8 people's stories before they kind of really come together for the finale, and that just kind of feels a little bit weird. Where Quartet doesn't have that problem, but it really got me thinking afterwards that, and I've kind of been on this track for a while. I've mentioned it on the podcast, but it takes a lot for a game going for like a very specific like 16-bit console aesthetic, usually Super Nintendo aesthetic, to for me to give a shit about it on those merits. Because I was there. I lived it. And sure, I have nostalgia for it, but when I'm feeling that nostalgia, I'd much rather just kind of go back and play one of the classics than spend time with a game trying to emulate the classics or try to piggyback off of the classics. Uh and I think Quartet is a great example of that, where it's like you look at it and it's like, yeah, that sure is a Super Nintendo ass looking Super Nintendo RPG, isn't it? Like, it's not really doing anything innovative or special or new with it. It's just, wow, the people who made the game really loved 16-bit RPGs, and they made a 16-bit looking RPG. And I'm I'm just over it. Like, I've been kind of, and I look, I'm a super nostalgic dude. I have been since I was a kid. I got into my nostalgia really early in life. But I'm getting to the point now where I'm just kind of if nostalgia feels weaponized in a way these days, where I kind of just want something different and new and fresh, or put even the slightest spin on it. If you're not going to do anything really innovative with it, uh, and I think I need to be clear that I'm not against like pixel art as an aesthetic. I think that that's a valid form of um art for a video game, right? Like it there's certain things that you can do with that aesthetic that you can't do with a 3D game, or it allows a smaller team to do more with less, right? So I'm all for that, but I I want to see you do something cool with, or something special, not just an amalgamation of what I remember this stuff to look like when I was a teenager. I think really great examples of people doing really cool new shit with pixel art. There's the upcoming Replaced that I've been looking forward to for years, is finally coming this year. The recently announced Hunt Down Overtime looks really cool. And I already mentioned Octopath Traveler. I think that like the HD 2D style that Square Enix has been doing for those games, and also the Dragon Quest remakes, that looks really cool. That's the type of stuff that I want to see with like a pixel art style. I'm not I don't usually get all that jazzed when it's like, oh, this sure does look like something that could probably exist on a Super Nintendo. Now, obviously, there's probably stuff going on with those games that there's no possible way that they could run on that old hardware. I'm not a game developer. I couldn't say for sure. Obviously the textures having to run on, like a 1080p display or whatever, just by that nature alone makes it a different beast than what was going on in the 90s. But the end result is still something that to my eyes looks just like what I grew up with, and I'm like, yeah, I mean that's fine. Been there, done that. And that goes quadruple for people going for a PlayStation 1 style. There's a reason why I want like a lot of those PS1 games to be fully remade, and it's because it's hard to go back for me to like PS1 games. And that was the case even 20 years ago. I remember replaying Metal Gear Solid 1 before the Twin Snakes came out, and I was like, this is rough. I don't know that I don't know that I can handle this anymore, because I've become accustomed to a much better looking caliber of 3D polygonal game. And so when I see games coming out, it's like, oh, we made a survival horror game that looks like Resident Evil 1. And I'm like, right, but Resident Evil 1 in 1996 was trying to look as realistic as possible with the technology at the time. If they could have made it look even better, they would have, right? So that this concept of like going back because we love that aesthetic is just really weird to me. And I think it comes from like a place of people who were either like too young to see that evolution, or just or they're old enough to remember it, but in a much more rose tinted way than people older like myself. I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking about. But then on the other hand, right, like, because I'm a gamer, which means that I'm a hypocrite, right? Like we don't know what we want. We can say one thing and then turn around and claim that we want the opposite, almost in the same sentence. Uh, because if Square came out and said, "Yo, Final Fantasy 17 is going to look like Octopath Traveler 2," I would lose my goddamn mind. I think that'd be awesome. If Capcom announced a Street Fighter Alpha 4 and it was done with hand-drawn sprites, like the modern, like a modern version of the Alpha series, I'd lose my goddamn mind. I think that'd be rad as hell. But I think that's also because those companies have such storied legacy, and seeing them throw a nod to their past by way of their future, I think is interesting and kind of cool. And also on the other side of that, I played another indie game very recently called 1980X, which came out I think in 2021. I'd never heard of it before. My friend John Golson had it on his wish list, and he showed me the trailer when I was over at his house one day, and I was like, that looks really cool. And so it was like $10. I went home and immediately picked it up. And that's a game also going for a throwback aesthetic. But I think the thing that I enjoy about 1980X, as far as the graphics go, is that it's going more for an arcade style, which was unattainable for consoles by and large, right? Like they did great jobs with like the Street Fighter and Final Fight ports and Mortal Kombat and stuff like that for the consoles at the time, but they were still a far cry from what the actual games looked like in the arcade. So 1980X is going for that very distinct mid 90s arcade look. And so on that end it works really well, because that's something that I didn't get a chance to see a lot at home. I saw it in the arcade obviously because I was there, but I didn't see it on a home console very often until, many years later when we started to get arcade perfect ports of in collections and stuff like that. Um, I'm not it's and this isn't a review of 1980X. I will just say that if that sounds interesting to you, just please be aware that the game lasts about an hour and it has a to be continued uh stinger at the end, and it seems that developer has vanished from the face of the earth, and so there's probably not going to be a continuation of that game. I still really enjoyed it. I would probably still recommend it with those caveats in mind, but I would just want to talk here about the presentation, could like juxtaposed with like the presentation of Quartet or other games that I see of this nature that are going for that very distinct 16-bit Super Nintendo or Genesis style, where I just want to dream a little bigger, darling. I just want to see something a little bit newer with that, or if you are going for that aesthetic, do something that maybe wasn't done back in the day, right? Like maybe you do like a Diablo style game, but it looks like a Super Nintendo game. I could be into that. That's I haven't seen that before. Um, but when it comes to just like, yeah, we really liked Final Fantasy six, and we wanted to make another Final Fantasy six, and it's like, well, you're not gonna, like, you're just not, right? So I I would suggest doing something else, but that's just me. Those are my thoughts, but they're not your thoughts, because if they were your thoughts, they'd be my thoughts, or whatever. I'm still working on an outro, but thanks for hanging out, letting me yap at you, and I'll see you next time.